Hey everyone, welcome back to the Jack and Jared podcast. We're here, episode 15. My name is Jack, and I'm with my partner, the one and only Jeremy. How you doing, Jeremy?
Woo! Doing well, doing well.
So, thank you guys for staying tuned. And as always, if you enjoy this content, please hit us with a like button. We'd love it too if you subscribed and also share this episodes with people that you think would also like it. By doing so, you actually extend our reach so more people can view our content. So it's not just to make Jeremy and I feel good about ourselves, which, trust me, it does make us feel good, but it does help other people find our content. So just know that your small act of kindness can go a long way. But enough about the past and enough about you. Now we're going to talk, actually, we're going to talk about you a little bit more, but we're going to talk about kind of consumer spending is the way that I would phrase it. The idea of intentionally spending and or investing in companies or programs that you believe in or don't believe in. And the way that we kind of got to this conversation is Jeremy and I were talking on the side, and we were talking about how a lot of young people will not shop on platforms or with companies like Amazon because they think they're the big dog that takes advantage of all the other small fish in the sea, and some people don't want to support those types of businesses. And it's really an interesting conversation because I definitely think that people have the power through their dollars to influence businesses and organizations. And sometimes we do, and we don't take things into consideration when we're doing it. So today we're going to kind of talk about it and different philosophies that people have and the impact that they may or may not have, along with potentially some secondary issues related to it. So Jeremy, you want to kick us off? You have any initial thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my initial thoughts are, I'm excited to delve into this a bit more, but I feel like people are just super reactionary and kind of just get upset. And they think to say, I'm going to stop spending here and that's going to solve the problem. And maybe sometimes that would be helpful. Maybe sometimes it shows support for something that's good. But in my opinion, from what I've seen, a lot of times people do those things and it lasts for a week. And then they go about doing the regular things that they've been doing. Or they do it for a week and without realizing that a different company they're supporting is actually still supporting the cause that they're against or whatever it might be. And to me, it kind of goes a little bit backwards. And I think I don't like to talk. My goal was to not talk too much politics on these podcasts because I like to be open. I don't want to have a certain view and stick with it. I like to learn. And if someone convinces me otherwise, I like to be open to that view. One of the, I guess, campaigns that I feel bothers me the most from this, spending money and boycotting for causes is the BDS movement. The boycott, divest, sanction for Israel. I just feel like it's completely backwards. I understand people's intentions for it, and I don't disagree completely with some of their intentions of not supporting Israel because of some of the injustices they might be committing. But I also feel like a lot of times people also aren't the same across the board, where most of our consumer spending in America comes from China, who's guaranteed or we've proven that they're committing atrocities right now, literal concentration camps. And I don't really see why we still support that. If we're against atrocities of governments, why do we only choose to boycott some and not others? So that's a big one that I think comes to mind that just seems hypocritical. And another one, I guess, that comes up a lot is would be boycotting Amazon and or boycotting Tesla. People just don't like those billionaires, I feel, Bezos and Musk. A lot of times people complain about Amazon while they're on a website that is run on Amazon. I don't understand how that works.
Yeah. Well, so you kind of opened up a lot there. The BDS movement is something that, listen, as a Jewish person with strong connections to Israel, it makes me very uncomfortable. And part of the reason I think that people are not taking what's going on in China seriously is, and I know this is more of a recent development, is we have a president who just came out and flatly said that he's not going to do anything about the Uyghur population in China, or the more aggressive actions the Chinese government is taking to Taiwan, or even the silencing of the protesters that are protesting for civil liberties in Hong Kong, because of, quote, cultural differences. And that's, an extremely, in my opinion, scary reason to allow people to do whatever they want. But yeah, let's. I don't want to dive too much into BDS because it really triggers people's emotions. But one of the things you said is people don't want to buy from these billionaires, and I'm a true capitalist, and there's a growing conversation of billionaires shouldn't exist. And I can't necessarily agree or disagree with it, but I do really believe that some of these people are making the pie bigger for all of us. Like the fact that we now have these growing technologies, and Elon Musk single-handedly got electric cars pretty much on the map. Like you had like the Prius, which was like the most embarrassing, sad car, next to like the Nissan Leaf and some of these things. But you can say that like, oh, we shouldn't have billionaires and things, but like this is the best system that we have in place to chauffeur capital and resources around in order to create technological innovation, and just lower the cost of goods and services. And I just think that we need to remember that this isn't a zero-sum game, that if you are like supporting Amazon or something like that, which you don't have to if you don't want to, and that's part of the conversation. It's not just Jeff Bezos getting money. There's third-party vendors on Amazon. I sell stuff on Amazon to make a few extra bucks, and Amazon takes like maybe 20%, maybe a little bit more, and it might be just because of the products I send, but because of Amazon, I now have an opportunity to make additional funds, or money, however you want to call it. So it's not just Jeff Bezos getting rich. Like I am also being able to support my livelihood by doing it, and I know a lot of other people are doing it too. So it's just it's more simple than just being pro or against a single person.
Yeah, I agreed, and I would just like comment also. It's basically saying the same as like they become wealthy, they get their wealth because of the value that they add. It directly comes from value adding. If Musk didn't add value to the everyday person in America or to the electric car industry, he wouldn't be a billionaire. If he didn't add value to payments between people from PayPal, he wouldn't have made his initial money. If he didn't launch all these space rockets into space for way less money than NASA did, he wouldn't have his wealth from there. Bezos, a lot of people say like, is taking advantage of his employees. And a lot of those employees, I know that you don't always have a lot of options. There are sometimes options. You can get another job. They're not all quitting en masse. They didn't all vote for the union this week in Alabama. More than half of them voted against the union. So obviously, or maybe it doesn't seem like it's so bad to work there. And then at the same time, you said it brings you value, which like it brings a lot of small businesses value too. A lot of people say, oh, Amazon's killing the mom and pop shop. Guess what killed the mom and pop shop? 2020. Amazon was just there because they could continue logistically, and they didn't take advantage of 2020 and take everyone's money. They were there to help everyone for 2020. And that's why his wealth went up so much last year, because I had nowhere I could get groceries comfortably. I had nowhere I could get my workout gear comfortably because all the places closed. I had nowhere I could do anything. Amazon was my lifeline last year that kept me operating. And a lot of times too, I have a choice to go other places than Amazon. Everything I bought from Amazon, I can buy from somewhere else, but I won't get my points back that I get with my credit card from Amazon. I won't get my Prime benefits that I get with my movies and my music. I won't get whatever else it might be. It's directly tied, so I don't have to like put in my credit card information all the time. There's benefits I get from Amazon, and that's why I use them every day. If I didn't get those benefits, I wouldn't use them every day. And people like, a lot of times I just feel like my last comment is people think that they're forced into these things. They're not.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to that you said, which we're talking about, is in the past year during the lockdowns, and I'm in Florida, which apparently they had a lockdown for 6 weeks here, and that was it. Because things are just open, and say whatever you want to say, but it's open down here. But everywhere else in the country and potentially the world, the lockdowns were very serious. And what Jeremy said about the only places that really could thrive were like the big tech companies like Amazon, and even like not necessarily tech related, but it's really hard to be a mom and pop company store, no matter if you're selling groceries or like home improvement materials, whatever it is, when you can't abide by these COVID lockdown rules. But Home Depot can, but Staples can, but Amazon can, but Walmart can, but Costco. So those small little bodegas on the street is nearly impossible for them. And it goes back to exactly what we opened up with. If you want to make an impact, part of it is with how you spend your money. And if you intentionally, during the next couple of months, as things continue to reopen wherever you are, if you intentionally go to those mom and pop stores, you will be providing a huge benefit for them and helping them to exist. So if you want to combat these big companies from gobbling up all the small guys, it does take some intentional actions. You can't just want competition or not want Amazon to take over the world, but at the same time use it. You need to go out of your way a little bit to fight for the little guy, because you want either diversity in the food chain or supply chain when it comes to food, or you want to have small businesses operating. So there is not just value, but there is importance to making conscious decisions of you wanting to support one company or another, especially right now what's going on.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is directly related to what you're saying. Sorry if I'm segueing off a little bit. I feel like a lot of people make their decisions based on what they're hearing on the news today, or what's the main thing on Facebook, and not doing so much research into it. And consumers just aren't really informed. And I guess what I'm thinking is that the consumer's fault, or is it the industry's fault? I feel like it's probably a little bit of both. I didn't read, or I didn't watch too much of Seaspiracy, but I saw different segments. It's a trending documentary on Netflix right now about how bad the fish industry is. And something that resonated with me that I think is a little bit related is the stamps that they have on tuna that says this was fished dolphin eco-friendly, whatever the sticker is. And then they basically say the sticker doesn't even really mean anything. There's a good chance that dolphins were hurt anyway. So I guess part of me thinks why aren't consumers actually doing the research to see if they actually support the products that they support, or dislike the products they don't support, and actually changing their spending habits based on that. I don't see people doing that too much. I feel like they mostly just complain. And then at the same time, maybe there should be, I guess, a little bit more of transparency into what certain companies do and don't do. So and then I guess a little segue on top of that, and we'll see what you do as well, is do I personally buy things or not buy things from certain companies? I think so, but I can't think of an instance that comes to the top of my head. When I go to the store, usually I'm looking for what I need, and then maybe I'm looking at the price, and then I don't know. I feel what's that company, the South American Patagonia? I feel like they've donated a lot of stuff. So if I see them or I hear about them, I'll be oh yeah, that's a cool company. But I don't go out of my way to buy from them. And I'm sure there's another company that has more inhumane practices that they do to make my clothing. I don't even know about it. And if I did know about it, I'm obviously not changing my spending habits because of it.
Yeah. So, one of the things you talked about was properly labeling food and other products to make sure they're made without certain products or aren't tested on animals, or they're organic, which some of you may or may not know is essentially a
Made up.
yeah to well the label has no meaning. It's an unregulated label.
Right.
So, we all know inherently or innately what the word organic pseudo means, but when you see it on a label, it doesn't actually mean that a lot of times. Just so one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, so even if you wanted to like push for legislation to have like better labels, or you wanted to fight against these big companies, there are negative externalities that we should be thinking about. So for instance, a couple of years ago, Amazon increased their salaries for their lowest level workers to essentially, I think, a $15. And they immediately began lobbying for a $15 minimum wage. And this really isn't a conversation about politics. Should we have a $15 wage? Should we not? But the point that I want to get across here is, it is like Amazon can afford a $15 minimum wage, but the mom and pop on the store doing with the bodega, they may not be able to. And there's some argument of, if in capitalism, if you can't make it, then that's like your own fault. I think some of that's a little bit nonsense when you start creating legislation after people are getting going. But like, we also need to remember that like sometimes we can be proposing laws that on the surface sound good, i.e. a $15 minimum wage, and not recognize that we're actually protecting by creating a higher burden for other companies, especially smaller companies, by enacting these types of legislation. So if you're serious about going after the big guys, you may want to recognize that by putting in some of this legislation or some of these regulations, the people that you're really hurting are the small guys that employ a lot more local people in your community and things like that.
Yeah, something that reminded me of a little bit, I feel like it might be a little bit of a stretch of a connection, but with these COVID restrictions of the last year, a lot of restaurants had to go past like more stringent airflow, air conditioning, this and that. A lot of companies, a lot of restaurants didn't last last year. The ones that lasted are probably the ones that are groups or conglomerates or chains, because they can afford the investment of 10, 20, 30,000, whatever it might have been, to make their restaurant up to code so that they could be continue operating. So I feel like similar to what you're saying is, yeah, the big companies, a lot of time people want more regulation or they want better standards or this and that. And then they don't realize like that's actually making these bigger companies stronger.
And just think about it. Think about like, it's tax season, deadlines are pushed back. But if you're doing your own taxes as someone without a expertise in tax, they throw these new laws out every year, and it is really hard to decipher. I have a law degree, and even I still like go through some of these things, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I got to find like a real like lawyer that does tax, or like a CPA or something. And so think about how frustrating that can be on a personal sense, and then think about the mom and pop store that has to deal with now additional regulations. They don't necessarily have the resources to hire a lawyer to come in and bring them up to par. That's an expense that they weren't planning for, just because now we need new ventilation because of COVID. And so it's one way to think of it. As think about all the times in your own daily life that it can be hard to read the fine print, and then imagine it's your family store or something like that, having to navigate this increasing complex regulatory framework. And you got to start shelling out thousands of dollars for a tax person or a lawyer to do it. Like it is not a negligible expense for these small businesses.
Yeah, agreed. And then I guess segueing the conversation a little bit more. So do you think there's a problem at all right now with like, I guess, corporations playing politics, and then like with people trying to change their spending based on those politics, or do you think everything's kind of okay right now and it'll solve itself? It hasn't really been an issue. It's mostly a bunch of like smoke.
I think companies that play politics is one of the most backwards ass shit that like there is. Corporations are imaginary creatures that are after the dollars in your pocket, and they're not Scrooge McDuck in that sense. They do want to offer you something that you find of value, but like if they sell sugar or tobacco or whatever, they don't really care about the health crisis that we're having, or the issues of you're going to get cancer by smoking cigarettes or vapes or whatever else. They're going to advertise it, or they're going to find a way to get to try to convince you to use their product. And when it comes to politics, I just don't believe that these corporations are acting from the soft spot in their heart, where they're looking after your best interest. They're trying to trick you. That's what my honest opinion is. They're trying to make you think that they can do this song and dance over here to make you think that they're woke or that they're on the right side of history or whatever it is. And what they're doing behind the scenes is all the shit that like we all shouldn't like. And whether it's still outsourcing to sweatshops, which I actually think is a natural part of the evolution of industry in a lot of companies. But they're doing things on like the other side that you similarly would be against, but they're just doing the song and dance over here, supporting whatever new political stance or fab is out there because they think young people or people that are fighting for that cause will want to see, and therefore they'll get their dollars that way. So I have a real negative attitude.
It's called virtue signaling, right? Isn't that?
Yeah. So virtue signaling 101 is like when you pat yourself on the chest because you're like, like, oh God. So like virtue signaling 101 is like over like last year when, there were protests for Black Lives Matter, and that whole movement was really picking up steam, which had a lot of credibility to why we needed to actually talk about some of these issues more. But one of the things of virtue signaling that made me so uncomfortable was everyone just putting up a black square on their Instagram page. It meant nothing. It made people feel good for a second. And then because they felt good, it's just like their burden's done. Sure, there might be a conversation that I'm talking down the impact of letting other people know that like you support the cause or whatever it is. And, I'm sure there are persuasive arguments, but at the end of the day, like if that's all you did is put up a black square, you didn't reach out to talk to people to try to understand where they're coming from, and see like, are there things that you're not aware of, or are there things that you can do to support them? Then it's all just virtue signaling. So that's my understanding of virtue signaling 101, just empty gestures that on its surface make you seem like you're fighting the good fight.
Yeah, I feel like Disney has had quite a few virtue signals, basically like firing employees that might not have said like politically correct things or even like not nice things. I'll admit like some of the things that have said maybe weren't the best, but then Disney acts like they're all good. They filmed in China a few miles away from that concentration camp. I don't know how they can comment on anything that anyone's saying when they are more or less, in my opinion, supporting a concentration camp. So like anything they say, I find negligible and complete virtue signal. If they actually believed what they said, they wouldn't do half of the things that they're doing. And I wish, I guess, one of the closing thoughts before we get to our ending of the show is basically, I wish people were more aware of these things or looked into them more. Disney says, oh, this is bad. And everyone goes, oh, Disney's great because they call this bad. And it's like, does anyone do the research to look into what Disney does and maybe like realize, hey, Disney's not good either because of what they do? I don't know.
Yeah. Again, anytime corporations get involved in politics. I don't think it is for this greater good. Even if I agree with their stance that they're taking, I hold my credit cards a little tighter when I see it, because I think it's a bit of a smoke and mirrors act. So they're companies, they're not people. They don't need to worry about bringing food home. They have shareholders. They don't have families.
Yep, agreed. All right, so we're gonna go into the end of the segment, like what we learned this week. Sorry, I keep like explaining myself. I should just be doing it. Jack, is there anything you want to share before mine? I feel like, I don't know why, but I keep on bringing up these like controversial things, or things I think might be a little controversial. I guess because they just keep coming to mind. But if you don't have anything, I could start with mine.
No, start with yours. Get into the controversial stuff. Like, again, if you're listening,
it's a little sarcastic. I guess people probably know that to expect that from me. But I learned this week that police officers don't know the difference between a gun and a taser. And I've never shot a real gun, I don't think. Maybe I've shot like a pump gun. I've shot a taser. That's my limited experience of guns and tasers. I can tell the difference between a gun and taser every single time. You give me two things in front of me, I'll be able to tell which is the gun and which is the taser. If I was a teacher, or I'm a teacher, how I would relate it to a teacher, I never get a marker to draw on the blackboard. The markers are right next to the blackboards, but I don't get my marker to draw on the blackboard. I always get the chalk to draw on the blackboard. I'm a teacher. I'm not an idiot. So I learned this week that some people, some professions don't know the difference in basic tools that they use.
Yeah, and so what Jeremy is referring to is what happened less than a week ago in Minnesota. An officer during, my belief was a traffic stop, what got into a conversation. They were talking. It seemed like it was physical altercation, and she was a female officer. Although that's not really that important, she pulled out what she thought was a taser, yelled "taser, taser" twice, which I guess is what they're supposed to do before they discharge the taser. It ended up being a gun, and shot this.
Is that like, is that a thing they're supposed to do? Is say "taser, taser"?
I'm just assuming. Otherwise, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I can't make any sense of it, and it's not to say that. Yeah, and so basically that's what Jeremy's talking to. And so unfortunately, there was another police killing, a young African American male, and so that's what he's talking about. It happened in Minnesota. So I had a separate thing lined up, but I guess I'll share this that I learned a while ago on something that I learned. So there was a study of law enforcement that had started utilizing non-lethal weapons like tasers. And what the study showed was that the proliferation of these non-lethal weapons actually increased the amount of physical altercations between police officers or law enforcement, whatever the right term is, and civilians. And part of the theory of why this happens, because it statistically happens, is that the prevalence of non-lethal weapons encourages the officers to use them, because now they have something besides a gun or a baton that they can use that doesn't really require much trauma on their end. Firing a shot, like if you've ever fired a gun, there's a big bang. It's a little scary if you're not used to it. And pulling out a baton, actually physically hitting someone, can be traumatic too. But shooting a taser or this other stuff is, it's like shooting a BB gun or a Nerf gun. There's like nothing happens. And so that's the theory, that the proliferation of non-lethal weapons actually causes an increased confidence in using them. And that's why, in my opinion, we need a greater conversation about not just using tasers and things like that, but this whole retooling police. And just the one thing I want to leave on, or not necessarily leave on, but one thing I want to touch upon is listen, over the past year or so, there have been very serious conversations about reforming police, and like everything in this great country, it's one of the benefits we have being here. We can have these conversations, and we can actually try to figure out a better way of doing things. However, big however, the more we cast a giant shadow over a single group of professionals, law enforcement, the harder it's going to be in the future to recruit talented individuals into these professions. If you want really good teachers, people in law enforcement, all these professions, you need to attract talented people. It's just the fact of the matter. Paying them more isn't a solution for them being better. It's a solution for increasing the applicant pool. And what I really want to get at right now is that by saying that all cops are bad, painting a picture that everyone is a homogenous group of people, that there's no differences, despite what the law enforcement personnel may look like or anything like that, and saying that all of them are bad. And therefore, if you join them, you're bad too, is going to be a powerful force in preventing the people that we need from joining these professions. And this past incident that Jeremy brought up really highlights that we need not just I don't want to say more police. We maybe we do, maybe we don't. I don't know, but we need better police, and the way we get better police is by getting better applicants. And saying that everyone who is a police officer is bad, in my opinion, is not going to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't usually be the one to like say something like that, but I can't disagree with it. I feel like the issue is so complex. It's not easy to just say one thing would be the issue, but I do think that's part of it. Is we need, it sounds really weird, we need kind of more money to go towards it. Or
100%.
Thing is though too, that I like that I've actually seen in some cities now, is like there needs to be more money to one aspect of policing, but then also like a couple branches of policing need to be broken off, I feel, and given to a different department. So like, I forget what city it is, but some cities have, if it's a mental health check, there's like 3 social workers who are sent, and then they like will call a cop if they need. I feel like policemen at schools, maybe you need a security guard. I don't know if that should be under the jurisdiction of the police department. Driving like traffic stops and stuff, I feel like that could be moved to the side. And then real crime, because there is real crime, unfortunately. We should up the funding a little bit maybe for police, and up the training, up the standards really too. You should need more than a college degree to be a cop. You should need more than 2 weeks of training to be a cop. You can be 18 years old, graduate high school, not be too bright, and become a cop. That's a little bit worrisome. Similar to being a teacher. I feel like those are 2 of the most important professions, and they're like the easiest jobs to get. That's all I have to say though.
Yeah, so, and that's just, I just kind of want to leave it on that we obviously got into a very serious issue that's worthy of longer conversations, and potentially worthy of very serious reform. But we're all human beings. We're not just because we look a certain way or we do a certain job doesn't mean that we're exactly the same as everyone else that looks that way or does that job. And we need to recognize that like there are good with the bad, and saying that everyone is bad is going to do more disservice to creating positive reform than whatever the opposite is. So that's all I got. This is my last day in sunny Miami. So next week when you guys hear us, I'll be back in the Northeast. So if I'm a little sad, then you'll know why.
We're sitting together. We gotta have one episode where we're together, one camera. And again, like, subscribe, comment, keep the conversation going. We want to hear what you say. Disagree with us. We love disagreement. We love to hear opposing views, or agree with us. Say like Jack made a really good point. Jeremy, we don't really know what he's talking about. We want some feedback. So thank you. Appreciate everything. And we'll see you soon. Peace.
See you guys.